Okay, hopefully we're coming in nice and loud. Welcome this afternoon to Queensland Garden Expo live via Facebook and also via YouTube. Shame we can't be on the first day of an awesome 3-day event. It's something that I definitely enjoy heading up from the some of you might have caught some earlier, but we're going to be across with Phil Dudman very shortly, who's going to be telling us all about how you can be growing your own wonderful produce in punnets. So I'll flick you across the field and you can get underway.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks everyone for joining me. I've got the beanie on today. It's been a bit chilly outside. I was hoping to come to you from the garden, but I've brought my whole potting bench into the kitchen. I just hope my wife's not watching because she'll kill me, but you know, she's busy working, hopefully, so we should get away with it. So it's all about raising seed in punnets. Now, if you've dabbled in seed raising and you haven't necessarily had the luck that you'd hoped for, then today we're going to sort out a lot of the issues that you may have had so that you're going to be absolutely successful with your seed raising. If you've never sown seed and you're thinking, oh, gee, I'd like to give it a try, but you feel a bit nervous about sowing seed, no worries. We're going to get you up and running today, and you're going to take the plunge, and hopefully you'll be growing all your veg from seed from now on, because it is really so easy. Once you set the conditions up for their success, you will be successful. These little seeds are programmed to grow. So, you know, we've just got to assist them and get it right for them. So what's coming up today in this broadcast for Queensland Garden Expo? Well, I'm going to go through the things you need to get started. All the bits and pieces. We're going to look at the sowing, the doing, getting those bits right. We're going to look at managing your stock after you've sown and ensuring really good germination and good plant development ready for planting out. We're also going to be looking at some tips for using your seedlings that are in punnets to maximize your food production, right? So we're going to be growing as much food, and using these techniques are going to be able to assist you in doing that. And we're also going to finish up by just looking at some of the things you can be sowing this time of year. And that includes things for the rest of the winter, and also preparing for spring and summer crops. So there's lots to get through over the next half an hour or so. So I hope you can stick with me. Okay, so what do you need to get started? Well, actually, no, before we get into that, I just wanted to talk about some of the benefits of sowing seed. Generally, sowing seed is cheap. You know, it doesn't cost you much money to buy a packet of seed and grow all the plants you want. When you're sowing your own seed rather than buying seedlings, you have access to a much broader range of vegetables that you can grow. Some of the interesting heirlooms, heritage varieties that you can't get necessarily down at your garden centre in a punnet. And when you see the seed right through from sowing to germination to harvest, it just adds another level of satisfaction to this whole growing your own food thing. Now, the specific benefits of starting your seed in punnets, well, it allows you to really significantly increase your veggie production. It's a much better use of your space and time. I mean, there are benefits in direct sowing out in the patch, but there are so many more benefits in starting in punnets. I think of the space that's out there in the patch as prime real estate, and you may have had this experience yourself. You sow some seed directly out there in the garden. You wait a couple of weeks and some of them don't come up. So you sow some more, and hopefully the second time you'll be lucky. Well, that prime real estate has just been played with for a couple of weeks. Nothing's going on there. I prefer to save the space out in my patch for things that are growing. So by starting my seeds in punnets, I'm sure that when I'm ready to go, the plants are actively growing. Here's some of the things I'm growing now. Some of the things that I'm nurturing for my patch. I've been sowing some radishes over here. I've got some peas that are just starting to come up. Here you go, this gives you a better look. I've got some English spinach. I do love English spinach. They're probably about 3 weeks old. I've also got some green onions, or you might call them shallots, scallions. There's some beetroots coming along there. They are looking like they are ready to plant out. Up the back here, I've got a heap of pak choy that I've sown in a single cell punnet and transplanted into these multi-cell punnets, and I've got some lettuces growing here as well. So by the time they go into the patch, these are potentially 2, 3, 4 weeks old. So it's a really good use of time and space. You know, sometimes when you're direct sowing, you've got some things in one part of the garden, another and over in another bed. It's difficult to remember where they are and to give them the care that they require to get that germination happening. And that's often the cause of the fail. You know, it's just difficult to do when you're busy. But when you've got them all here in one tray, you can put them all together. It's one sort of move over to check them daily and to water them and do whatever you need to do. You've got great control over the conditions. If it gets stinking hot, you can move these things into the shade. If it gets cold, you know, you can bring them inside next to you by the heater, you know, for the night to keep them warm. And what I love too is that you've always got something on hand to plant. As soon as a space comes up in the patch, you just go and grab one of these. What am I going to put in that space? You grab it and you pop it in, and they're up and running. You've got 3 or 4 weeks head start. So there's so many benefits in sowing in punnets because of all those things. Look, you know, if you are into successive planting too, if you want to just keep up your supply of lettuce, for example, you can always have them coming along in the background, ready to go. And look, if you don't use them, you can always share them with someone else. Right, so what do you need? Of course, you need some punnets. And you might have seen that I'm using a lot of these multi-cell punnets. You know, if you've been buying punnets from your garden centre, you've probably got some of these laying around. Hang on to them, you know, reuse them. I've got stacks of them, and you know, they come in very handy. These single cell punnets are also good. I mainly use the multi-cell punnets, but these single cell punnets are good for, you know, mass sowing. So if I am say right now I'm doing tomatoes, so I can do 4 different varieties of tomatoes in this one punnet, and when they're up and running, I can prick them out and pop them on into single cells. It's just a technique that really helps to make this process efficient, especially when it comes to using the space. You need a tray. You don't have to have a tray, but if you're serious about this stuff, you can have a tray so you can put in, say, 10 of these punnets and move them all around at the same time. It makes it very, very efficient. And of course, you need seed. Here's a part of my collection of seeds. I've got a stack of them there. You need plenty of seed. You need them to be fresh, right? So if you've got old seed, you know, it loses its viability. So Corn particularly, you kind of need fresh seed every year to really get a maximum germination. Some seed tomatoes, for example, you get a few years out of a packet of seed. So always check the use by date and go for the longest one if possible. Even if you get to near the use by date, there's no guarantee all of them are going to germinate. They start losing their viability from the day they're harvested. You need some labels. I just use things like this. This is a milk carton that I've chopped up and turned into a little plastic label. You want to know what you got. I've also used some old punnet labels. There's one there, which I just chop up and write whatever it is. They're the sugar snap peas. You need some liquid fertilizer. So once you get things going, we're going to go through this in a moment. Something, whether it's an organic form or synthetic, you need to push those seedlings along in the punnets before you plant them out. Sometimes they can just sit there and do nothing. And if you've ever sown seed in punnets and they've come up and gone, oh, wow, they're looking good, but then they haven't grown on, they need feeding. Right? So a liquid fertilizer is a great way to get that nutrient to those young seed. A mini hothouse. Yeah, I've got one here. It's all here in the kitchen with me. Very handy. That's good for cold times, right? So I'm about to do my tomatoes. I'm about to do a whole lot of other summer things, cucurbits, cucumber, watermelons, pumpkins, zucchinis. It's still quite cold here in Lismore, where I live. And by just putting them in something like this, you can pick these up from a garden centre for, say, $20. You can up the heat and really get these things kicking along. I think where most people are watching today are probably in southeast Queensland, northern New South Wales. This is all you need. Some people will get a little heat bed. If it's blooming cold where you are, a little heat bed might be nice to warm up the mix and germinate those seed. But this is enough to just get them going. You don't have to buy one of these. If you've got one of those containers like these, here's one. One of these containers you get from a $2 shop. What are they now? $3 shops? I don't know. But you get one of those. They get a lid with it. I don't know where my lid is, but you can put your seedlings in there and put the lid on top, and that's like a mini greenhouse. That'll really heat up and might even get too hot. If it gets too hot, you can just move the lid and just open it up and let a little bit of heat out. The other good thing about this too, you can use it in summer, right? So you wouldn't use your plastic lid in summer. It's just going to get too hot. The things are going to cook. But you could cover the top with shade cloth. Now, when things get too hot, you don't want lots of sun on your seedlings. They'll just dry out too quickly and they will burn. So putting them in something that you can cover with shade cloth, you can cover the whole thing. Now you've got a little shade house for the summertime. The other benefit too is that because you've got no drainage at the bottom, you can put a little bit of water at the base. If you've got to go off to work, seedlings may need 2 waterings a day in the summertime, even 3. So putting a little bit of water in the base, they can just suck that up through the day. Put your shade cloth over, you're in business. So that's all you need. You don't need much stuff to really get it going. All right, let's get on with some sowing. Right. I have got my tray set up here. I'm going to move my camera a little bit so that you can see what's going on. Oh, did I say you needed some seed raising mix? I forgot that bit. Oh my heck. Here we go. You can make your own, but we're not going to do that today. We're just going to go with a product, right? Something it's going to give you success. That's really convenient. This is a Scott's product. You can pick it up. I found it really, really good to use. It's reliable. You can buy one of those. Costs you about $7, and you'll fill up probably about 4 of these trays. That's 40 punnets of seedlings for $7 that you can do. That's all you really need. All right, and that's what we're going to use today. We're going to use this with our seedling tray here. That's the first step, of course, is to look at that. We've got the technology. Is to start filling these up. So I've got some of that mix in the bucket, and I can go through, and when you've got them all set up like, gee, my wife would kill me. When you've got it all set up like that, you can go over quite quickly and efficiently and cover all those punnets. Now, whenever I'm sowing, I try to do a full punnet, so I've got plenty of seedlings coming on. Now, I'm not going to fill up a whole lot because it's just for show. Once you've got it basically filled, I want you to do this as well. Go through and push the mix down into those cells. Compress it. And the reason for doing that is that when you come to take these little seedlings out of their cell, if the mix is not compressed, the mix will just fall off the roots. Now, will the roots grow in here now that we're compressing? We always hear, don't compress the soil. Yes, they will, because there's enough gritty material in here to allow for air spaces to be there. All right, so we've compressed that down, and then we're just going to put some more mix on the top. That's going to be nice and loose. That's where the seed will be sown. Excellent. Now, once you've done that, you take it out and you give it a good water. You want to water that mix in. I'm not going to do that now because it's going to make a blooming mess in here. And my life will be very, very short as a result. So, you know what I'm going to say now? Prepared one earlier. So here's one already filled, compressed, and watered and drained. Now I've got one of these things here. This is a plant label. I use that for making holes, little divots in the surface of that potting mix to sow the seed. That's all you need. You could use a pencil or something else. Now, as far as knowing what depth to plant it, that's really important, because if you don't sow your seed deep enough, if you sow your seed too deep, then it won't germinate. Generally, there's a general rule of thumb. You sow the depth needs to be twice the width of the seed. So I'm going to sow some radishes. Great thing to be sowing right now. You can see those seed are about 2 to 3 mils wide. So I'm going to sow those about 6 mil deep. What does it say on the pack? It says 5 mil. So always check the pack. 6 mil, that's pretty good. So you use your little, where are we? Here we go. You use your little stick here to make your holes in there, around about 6 mil deep. Now I can go through and pop my seed in. Now you'll see here that I'm putting more than one seed into each of those little holes. Shouldn't you be planting these things singularly? Well, some plants I like to multi-sow. So I put more than one in each little cell. Normally with radishes, I'll put about 4 or 5. And when they go out into the garden, there will be 4 or 5 there together. Here we go. Here's where 3 have come up. Oh, that's a sad looking one. It's only got 1. We've got a few coming up there, and they will grow quite happily together. Some plants don't mind growing close together. Others, like my pak choys, they are always grown singularly. So that's why I will start them in a single punnet and then transplant them into there for growing on before they go out into the garden. Right, so imagine we've done all our seeds. You want to put a label on each one so you know what you've got and water them in well. So look, I find that using a watering can to water them in is fine. Some people prefer to use a mister, but it's a lot of misting to do. And as long as you know, you're careful about your watering, you can water this quite easily without dislodging the seed, because this tends to stick together and it drains well, so you won't have any trouble. I've even got a tiny watering can which I use as well for watering the plants. So that's the process of the planting, getting the depth right, making sure you've got fresh seed, it's not too old, and watering it well, having your mix wet before you sow, and then sowing and watering. What about the regular attention? Well, they need daily attention, right? So you want to be checking on your seedlings every day to see what's going on. Do they need some more water? What's the weather doing? Is it a bit cold? Maybe I can put them into my little igloo and keep them warm, so I've got the right temperature to get these things to germinate. If it's too cold, some seed won't germinate because it'll just sit there, and the longer it sits there without germinating, the more potential there is that it's going to rot. Is it hot? Do I need to move it into the shade? Is it rainy? If it's really wet and it's raining all day for days and days, I would even consider moving them out of the rain, because it's not going to be getting much sun. And just so the nutrient that might be in your mix is just not, being washed out, and the seeds are getting too wet. Seeds need to be kept moist, but they don't want to be soaking wet. So those sorts of things. I put these this time of year straight out into the sun. If I was planting all these seeds in the summertime, I'd put them out in the sun under shade cloth to keep them, just take the edge off that heat. All right, so once your seedlings come up, let's just talk about seed themselves. Each little seed has what it needs to germinate. So it has all the energy in the seed. Come on out there. Each little seed has what it needs to throw out 2 leaves. That's it. From then on, it's depending on the nutrients that the roots can pick up from the soil. So if you've got a seed raising mix that doesn't have much nutrient in, when you're watering a lot, so there is some nutrient in there, it's getting leached out, better to add a little bit. So watering once a week with some liquid fertilizer, we've got our liquid fertilizer, just to get them kicking along. That's really important. When you're ready to plant, let's have a look at these little things. I was saying that my beetroot might be just about ready to go. The beauty of these little single cell punnets, and you've probably used them before, is that you can just pop them out and out into the garden. Come on, baby. We're going live here. There we go. We've got a nice little root system happening there on that plant. That's ready to go out into the garden. So as soon as you find a spot out there in the garden where you can put in a row of these, get them out there and get them growing. I've got some pak choi. I've got heaps of pak choi here. I've got 5 punnets coming on. I eat a lot of it. I love it. It's a really useful veg. And it's fast. Like, if I plant these out, they'll be ready to eat in about 4 weeks' time. Now, being so quick, there's an advantage here, is that you can, to increase your production, you can plant these between rows of things that are a little bit slower. So if you've got some cabbages you're planting out at the same time, or you planted recently, they're spaced, say, 40 centimetres apart, you can put 2 cheeky little rows of these pak choys between them. They'll grow, do their thing. You've harvested them by the time the cabbage has got big enough to fill out the space. That's called interplanting, and it's a great way to increase your production. Similarly, with things like radishes, you can grab your radish, don't give it a big space for itself. Find a little spot where you know you can get these up and running and harvested. These will take about 6 weeks before the plants that are growing beside it take up the space. It's a great way in a small garden to increase your production. All right. If you don't have space that's ready to go, but your seedlings are, say, we've looked at those beetroot. If I didn't have space to put these in the garden, I might plant them into a big container and get them going. Or I think, oh, look, I'm going to have space in about 2 or 3 weeks' time, but these really need to keep growing. They're running out of space in their punnets. Pot them up. Get yourself some little pots. Grow them on into those pots for a little bit longer. And by the time they've got space out in the patch, they'll be 4, 5 weeks old and really kicking on. Keep your production line moving, keep things growing. Now, finally, before we wrap up and invite Matt back to the stage, because I don't have access to the Facebook feed at the moment, so you might have some questions coming through and I'd like to be able to answer those. So hang around if you put some questions there on the Facebook page. Because we will get to those and we will answer them later on. We've got some questions. I can come back to that page later on and address your question. Right, what can you be sowing right now? Keep up the winter veg, right? So all your leafy greens, Asian greens like the pak choi I've been growing, lettuces, keep them coming along, rocket, radish, beetroot, silver beet. You want to get some new silver beet in the ground. Cabbages will continue growing up until, say, November, even December in the subtropics. Broccoli will carry on for a bit longer too. A lot of heat tolerant broccoli varieties. Kale, turnip, which I grow a lot, and I actually grow turnips right through the summer as well under shade cloth. Continue sowing those. Spring onions, they should continue growing right through the year in southeast Queensland and northern New South Wales. Snow peas too. Get some snow peas in. And they're all good things to be sowing now. You also need to be preparing for your spring planting. So I know a lot of people in southeast Queensland, in the true subtropics, will have tomatoes growing through the winter time, a great time of year to be growing tomatoes. You should also be able to get a good early spring into early summer crop going, though you will need to protect those fruit from fruit fly that time of year and a few other little nasties, but it's a dry period. And I find it, really Mediterranean conditions are very good for growing tomatoes. So get some tomato seed in now, get some eggplant up and running. You'll be eating eggplants before Christmas if you're sowing now. Capsicum as well, chili, replace those old chili plants that have failed. You can get them up and running. All the cucurbits you can get started now too. So cucumbers, zucchini, squash, melons, pumpkins, that kind of stuff. Tromboncino, which everyone's growing. Get them all started now. Too cold probably to go direct sow. Ground might be too cold and you get a couple of cold nights, they'll really get hammered. But this is the beauty of growing things in punnets and in pots to get them started. So get them started strictly in punnets, in pots, and you'll be able to move them in at night. And that's what I do. Tomatoes through to cucurbits. Put them out in the sunshine, beautiful winter sunshine through the day. And then at night time, when it's time to go and prepare dinner, grab them, put down some newspaper somewhere in the lounge room or in the kitchen, wherever it's warm, and bring those seedlings in at night so they're not sitting out there in the freezing cold. So there you go. There's all the things you need to be successful in growing great seedlings in punnets, because you need to just make sure you've got all the right gear and it doesn't take much, and provide the right conditions. Now, something just popped up on my screen, so the technology's working. Got Jennifer's just popped in to say, just join the convo. Do you have a recipe for a good seed raising mix? Sure. Now, we didn't talk about that because I just wanted to show you the easiest way to get going, which was with a commercial product. So, Jennifer, I just stick with commercial product I pick up from a garden centre. It's not expensive. I can grow a lot of seeds with this. But if you wanted to make your own, there are lots of different recipes around. I've experimented with many, but what I tend to do is just mix up some coir peat with some sieved compost. So some compost from my compost heap. I take out all the large particles, give it a little bit of a sieve, and I might put some coarse river sand with that as well, and maybe some perlite as well, or vermiculite. One of those two, even both, just equal parts, mix them all together. If it looks a bit wet, I might add a little bit more sand, or I might just add a little bit more compost, and it works well. What's the optimal temperature range for germination? Thanks, Deanne. Thanks for joining us. Well, it depends on what you're sowing. So if it's the things that like to grow through the cooler months of the year, then you'll want to be sowing through the cooler months of the year. If you're growing things that want to grow through the warmer months, similarly, you want to be sowing in the warmer period. But the beauty of growing in the punnets is that you have the control over the temperature. So, as I was saying before, if it's too cold for getting your spring, summer veggies growing, you can put them in something like this, which is going to heat up out in the sun and just increase the temperature to stimulate that germination. Similarly, if I am in January, February, and I want to get started with some of my winter veg, it's too blooming hot out there to get them started, but I can keep my seedling tray somewhere shady and cool just to really chill them out. I might even water them with a chilled water just to provide those cooler conditions to get the germination initiated, and then I can bring them out and expose them to a little bit more sun, and but just keep them under shade cloth. So that's the beauty. You can manipulate the conditions to your liking. I hope that helps. Adam, thanks to everyone for, yeah, indeed. Adam's just giving us a thanks for the organisers and presenters for bringing this event together. Look, it breaks our heart that we can't be at Nambour this year because we just love it. We love getting together. We love seeing everybody and hanging out with a big bunch of gardeners. It's like a gardeners jamboree. It's been something we've been doing for many, many years. And this year we can't do it. So this is the next best thing. So yes, I hope you've enjoyed my presentation, and I hope you check out the program and see what else is coming up. Marion has asked, is it true that you should store seeds in the freezer for later use? I wouldn't freeze them, but you can grab your seed packets and put them into a sealed container, something with a lid that's airtight, and keep them in your fridge, and that will extend their life. So you know that they've got a limited viability. Normally the packet will say when the use by date is. It's not necessarily accurate, but if you keep them chilled like that, you'll get many more years out of a seed packet of seeds. When do you transition to having the lid off the seedling tray? Well, that's a good question. Like we're talking about this kind of thing, and I wouldn't bother using it for my winter veg because they don't need it. They don't mind the temperatures. The temperatures are perfect. I'm using this for germinating my summer veggies, my spring summer veggies, the tomatoes and the cucumbers and that type of thing. When would I take it off? Depends on the conditions. So if it warms up, I can open that up and let a little bit of heat out. If it's getting really hot, I can take this thing right off and just open it up, and it's going to be happy. But if things chill out again, I can whack it on. So it's a matter of getting a feel for it, and that's when you'll know that it's time to come off. Glenda, thank you so much. Lots of great hints and tips. My pleasure, Glenda. I hope you got some good tips from there, and you're going to go forth and sow the seed, watch it grow. Thank you. I'm still here.